Hey, how's it going, guys? Today I'm bringing you a video that I wish I didn't have to make. I'm bringing you a video that I would be more than happy to say that uh, I just this isn't something that I'm proud to be a part of, because in my mind, if I have to say anything about it, it's because no one else is. And not that I'm anybody special or important, but if some schmuck like me ends up seeing something like this and has enough of a reaction to want to put something up on my channel, I think uh, that's it's kind of sad. I should be making videos about farts and video games and stupid movies and food, but this, I think, requires a response. So if you're seeing the screen here, this is Jon Stewart. Now, I'm sure you remember him if you've ever seen The Daily Show. You know, the new show that has basically taken its place is John Oliver. Sorry. John Oliver has made his own show on HBO last week tonight, and I think he does a really good job of going over some of the things that Jon Stewart used to talk about in his show. Because if you remember correctly, his show wasn't just about making jokes. It was a lot of the time trying to talk about the inequalities and unfair things that happen in our world, specifically well, not necessarily specifically, but more often than not, he had talked about some of the inadequacies of the United States and its policies, and more importantly, its god-awful government. So, if you'll sit with me for a little bit, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna watch some of Jon Stewart's video, and let's just see a few things of what he has to say. And if you haven't seen this yet, it's number 3 on trending, as you can see here, so I'm hoping that a good number of you have seen it. And if you're watching it on my channel, I mean, I don't know what that says about YouTube, honestly, but let's just see what he has to say, because some of the things on here are gut-wrenching, because this man has been fighting for years now to try and get these first responders what they deserve. Now, when it comes to military action and it comes to pride in a country, I'm not one for it. I think that if you are someone who has patriotism, or you think that because of a specific location that you were born in, that you have any right to say anything special about your country, I think you're full of shit. But it doesn't mean that there aren't those that work and give their lives for others, and they deserve recognition, absolutely. And in this case, these first responders, as you'll see in just a moment, have done everything in their power for the people of America, and in response, or in all they ask in return is to help pay for their medical care, because of the health disadvantages that they took on for the people that they saved that day on September 11th of 2001, sorry. I am a little drunk. And let's just get into this. I've been talking for a little bit too long. You can skip ahead on if you feel like I'm kind of.
I want to thank Mr. Collins and Mr. Naylor for putting this together, but as I sit here today, I can't help but think what an incredible metaphor this room is for the entire process that getting health care and benefits for 9/11 first responders has come to. Behind me, a filled room of 9/11 first responders, and in front of me, a nearly empty Congress. Sick and dying, they brought themselves down here to speak to no one. Shameful. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it is a stain on this institution. And you should be ashamed of yourselves for those that aren't here, but you won't be. Because accountability doesn't appear to be something that occurs in this chamber.
I want to touch on that for a moment. He says accountability appears to be something that does not occur in this chamber. And I think that's those words can sometimes slip past the membrane that is our brain here, or whatever you want to call it. I'm honestly just trying to find the words to say, because this is completely outrageous. These people gave up their time, their lives, everything. And all they're asking is for the money required to take care of themselves after they had already given everything for the people sitting in that bench right there. And if you'll notice, all of these seats are empty. And that's because there are people in our political spectrum, and this is no, I'm sure if there's someone watching this, you probably think to yourself like, well, duh, because we've known this for a long time, but at what point do we stand up and say that enough is enough? These people, as he also said, they don't feel accountable for anything. Reason being, the only people that they feel that they have any accountability towards are the corporate overlords that supply them with the money and power that they so desire. Now, this might seem like a broken record at this point, because you've probably heard this over and over and over again. And every time I talk about this, people want to call me a communist or a socialist or whatever you want to call. And I honestly don't give a fuck. Like, those labels don't mean anything to me. If it means that we can have a good, happy society full of people that know what is coming to them because that they worked for it and they deserve it, and we can work together for the benefit of society as a whole, then you can call me whatever you want to call me. But what I will say is that if you think that our government and our economy is for the people, then you got your head so far in the sand that I don't even know if you can be convinced otherwise. I mean, there are still people that believe that climate change isn't a thing. And listen, I used to be on that boat. I used to think, at the very least, I just didn't want to hear it. I just didn't want to believe that at a certain time we're just not going to be around because of something that the past had done to us. Some of you might say, well, that's just a bunch of nonsense. Like, there's nothing we could have done about it. It was going to happen either way, and maybe you're right. Doesn't mean that you can just sit there and laugh in the face of it. The fact that by the time most of us are 40 years old, I'm 24 right now. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I'm not proud of that fact. I mean, I'm happy to have her, but, I've made some mistakes in my life, and one of them is not waiting on that. And there's a long story behind that, but, not to get into my own personal things. All of my point is that she's not going to see a world that I've seen. And maybe that's for the best. Because the world I've seen is full of corruption, selfishness, greed. And those that are honest, integral, have a sense of decency to them, they lose. They lose every time. Gone are the days of Martin Luther King and John Kennedy and other people. I mean, you could say some things about them. Everyone has their demons, sure. But what matters is what you stand for, what you choose to stand for. And those two men, among a lot of others, stood for what they thought was right, and they died for it. And Jon Stewart here is standing for what he believes is right. I think they don't see him as much of a threat, so obviously he's not going to die for it. I think the days of assassinations are well over, because at this point it's blatantly obvious who controls our country and our people. And the mindless slaves that we call voters have decided for themselves that they're perfectly okay with that. And I don't say that to be a jerk. You know, I'm a voter as well. I'm just like everyone else. I wanted what was best for the country too. But it does seem that not only have the elections been skewed in a certain direction for corporate greed, but also we've all been convinced that there's still a chance that the politicians are actually out for our well-being, and that's just not true. It won't be, and it never will be until we can overturn these bullshit rules that allow politicians to be paid off by corporations, that allow people in power that control the rest of our lives to just take money from a certain interest group and make laws based on what those people want. Until that changes, and it's been going on since the 70s, nothing will change. Now you could say, well, our country's doing just fine. We have more things, we have more people. Quality of life is gone dramatically down. You might have more things in your life. You might have a bigger TV. You might have a brighter, tinier screen in your pocket. You might even have more opportunity than your parents of the past. But when it comes to overall power to change things for the better, there isn't any. The only change that we have is the ability to sit down and watch as everything slowly falls apart. Because there are certain groups of people on this country in particular, but all over the world, but let's try to focus on one for right now. They have an idea of what they want, and that hasn't changed. More power, more money, more war, more consumption. George Carlin said it best. The American dream is called a dream because you have to be asleep to believe it.
We don't want to be here. Lou doesn't want to be here. None of these people want to be here. But they are, and they're not here for themselves. They're here to continue fighting for what's right. Lou's going to go back for his 69th chemo. The great Ray Pfeiffer would come down here, his body riddled with cancer and pain, where he couldn't walk. And the disrespect shown to him and to the other lobbyists on this bill is utterly unacceptable. You know, I would be so angry at the latest injustice that's done to these men and women. And, another business card thrown our way as a way of shooing us away. Like children trick-or-treating, rather than the heroes that they are and will always be. Ray would say, calm down, Johnny, calm down. I got all the cards I need. And he would tap his pocket.
I hate to keep stopping him because this man has more worthy things to say than I think I ever will. But just to show you that the passion that he has for these people, some of which he's gotten to know very well over the past few years, but originally I think it was because it was the right thing to do. And now he has seen that there isn't an answer for us. When you can't even manage to pay for the people, I think no one would disagree that the first responders to 9/11 deserve the extra money. I don't think that it would be too much to ask to replace any other program with something that would give them what they need. But nothing will change. If you'll notice, he said that they were given business cards because they were saying, basically where you want to go, who you want to ask, the real leaders of the country, the businessmen, the corporates. Those are the people that you want to go beg and plead to. And they're not interested in making your life better. They're not interested in empathy or compassion. You can't guilt them into believing that they did anything wrong or that they have any kind of part in these people's suffering. Because they only have one goal in mind, and that is to become wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. And it's incredible to me because this is something we've known about since the very beginning of time. It's always been fueled by the power and greed of a certain group of people. Always. Kings, leaders, the past have all done the same thing again and again and again, and we keep falling for it every time. The masses have all the power. All it takes is a revolt. Stand up for what you believe in. Get enough people to do what's right. What do you think the Civil War was about? We had to stand up to do what was right because there were certain corporate people that said they were making enough money off the backs of others. And they were going to keep it that way. And you know what? They've done it again. We are all working for very low wages, long hours, like Bernie loves to say. And if this isn't something you're interested in, if you don't believe in this, if you think that you're doing just fine, then I'm happy for you. I hope everything works out great for you. But there are those of us out here. I'm not one of them. I'm not trying to put on the pity train for me. Like, I happen to be in an all right position because I was lucky enough to be born into a family that got a job that was well paying and continues to do so because it's one of the very few factory jobs left in America. And my dad supports us, and he does a great job of it. And you could say that because of that, I have become spoiled in a way. And I would agree. But I've at least tried to use that time and privilege that I have to learn as much as I can and try to do everything in my power to make a difference. And you could be saying, well, sitting on your ass making a YouTube video, is that really making a difference? And I would say yes, it is. I hope it is, at least. I hope that one day this reaches enough people that maybe someone will listen and understand. There's more to life than just hearing about things and just saying, well, that's sad, and moving on. Eventually, we need to stand up. I know enough people that are my age that know these things, know what is happening, but don't want to do anything to change it. And you could say to me, what could we possibly do? I guess that's the problem. We need to figure out what we can do. Bernie says we need a new revolution. And a lot of people laugh in his face about it. It's because in the eyes of change, most people are torn down until finally someone actually does something and then they're heroes. All it takes is one person to stand up and get enough people involved and continue the path towards what is the correct goal. Jon Stewart is one of those heroes, if you ask me. Let's try to keep going down the video because I don't want to make this too long.
Where he kept the prayer cards. 343 firefighters. The official FDNY response time to 9/11 was 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That's how long it took for FDNY, for NYPD, for Port Authority, for EMS to respond to an urgent need from the public. 5 seconds. Thousands more poured in. The breathing problem started almost immediately, and they were told they weren't sick, they were crazy. And then, as the illnesses got worse and things became more apparent, well, okay, you're sick, but it's not from the pile. And then, when the science became irrefutable, okay, it's the pile. But this is a New York issue. I don't know if we have the money. And I'm sorry if I sound angry and undiplomatic, but I'm angry. And you should be too, and they're all angry as well. Empty chair on that stage that didn't tweet out, "Never forget the heroes of 9/11. Never forget their bravery. Never forget what they did, what they gave to this country." Well, here they are. And it would be one thing if their callous indifference and rank hypocrisy were benign, but it's not. Time, in their most valuable commodity. Difference costs these men and women their most valuable commodity. Time. Stage pulled back, and they got to come back. Make sure there's money for, and they are going to die. And I am awfully tired of hearing that it's a 9/11 New York issue. Al-Qaeda didn't shout "death to Tribeca." They attacked America, and these men and women, and their response to it, is what brought our country back. It's what gave a reeling nation a solid foundation to stand back upon, to remind us of why this country is great, of why this country is worth fighting for. And you are ignoring them. And you can end it tomorrow. Why this bill isn't unanimous consent and a standalone issue is beyond my comprehension. And I have yet to hear a reasonable explanation for why. It'll get stuck in some transportation bill or some for people like Ray Pfeiffer. Thank God for all of these people who will not let it happen. They responded in 5 seconds. They did their jobs. Courage, grace, tenacity, humility. 18 years later, do yours.
I think I'm going to end on that high note because I don't think there was really any other words that could be better said than what he said there, which is that they already did their job. So why can't Congress do theirs? Even if it's just the New York committee, someone needs to be responsible for this. It's not that the money's not there, and don't you try to tell me that it's not. It is. It always has been. If they could just stop putting it in their bank accounts for once, maybe we'd actually have something that could help the community or the people that serve the community. 9/11 was caused by the American government and their meddling in the Middle East. You can say it was because of religious, dogma or their radical ideas. They're just people like anyone else, and they didn't want to be fucked with, and we fucked with them. And we paid the price, not the government. The government owes us a lot. That's going to do it for me.